to me.
Yeah, me too. Put a couple ice cubes in mine.
Some shows don't just make audiences burst out laughing in front of the screen, they etch themselves into the memory of an entire generation. Diff'rent Strokes is one such legend. From the catchphrase, "What you talkin' about, Willis," echoing across America, to episodes that dared to tackle sensitive topics no one else would touch. This sitcom helped write television history in the late 70s and 80s. But behind the bright stage lights, the real lives of the cast were filled with tragedy, scandal, and secrets never before revealed. What turned the Drummond family from the perfect on-screen household into a set of shaken destinies in real life, and which secrets still leave fans stunned to this day? Join us as we uncover it all in this video, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next shocking stories. Behind the scenes, the birth and early success of Diff'rent Strokes. If you turned on the TV on a weeknight in the late 70s, chances are you'd have seen a small boy with a mischievous sparkle in his eyes asking, "What you talking about, Willis?" and instantly making audiences burst out laughing. But few people know that before that moment became an immortal line in American television, Diff'rent Strokes had a very different starting point from the version millions of families would come to love. The show's original concept carried the working title 45 Minutes from Harlem, reflecting both the literal and metaphorical distance between two worlds, a black boy from Harlem and a wealthy white family living on Park Avenue. This wasn't an idea NBC came up with on its own, but a project from Tandem Productions, the company backed by sitcom king Norman Lear, already well known for the success of All in the Family. Casting the main roles is a story that still surprises many. Norman Lear had his eye early on a boy named Gary Coleman, just 10 years old at the time, after seeing him in several TV commercials and pilot episodes for a planned revival of The Little Rascals. Those pilots never aired, but Lear recognized something special in the boy who, despite being only 4'8", 1.42 m due to a congenital kidney condition, had razor-sharp comic timing and a natural gift for facial expression. The character Arnold Jackson was essentially written for Gary with snappy one-liners only he could deliver to perfection. The role of Willis Jackson, the older brother, was almost handed directly to Todd Bridges. At 13, Todd already had experience in commercials, TV guest roles, and a lead in ABC's sitcom Fish. The producers didn't even require an audition. The moment they saw him, they knew he was the perfect foil to Gary's quick wit. To complete the Drummond family, they needed a Kimberly, who had the gentle charm of a Park Avenue daughter, but could also connect with young audiences. Dana Plato was the ideal answer. At just 13, she had over 100 TV commercials to her name, had once been a promising figure skater, and was spotted by a producer during a brief appearance on The Gong Show. Initially conceived as a lighthearted family sitcom, once NBC ordered a full season, the producers realized they had an opportunity to tackle more serious social issues. Alongside the laughs, Diff'rent Strokes boldly addressed topics like drug abuse, alcoholism, crime violence, and even child molestation, something almost unheard of for sitcoms at the time. Episodes like The Bicycle Man, in which a pedophile attempts to lure Arnold and his friend, shocked viewers, but also cemented the show's reputation as more than just entertainment. From its first season, ratings were strong enough for NBC to know they had a hit. Gary Coleman earned $1.800 per episode in the first season, but with his rising popularity within a few years, he negotiated $70,000 per episode, making him NBC's highest-paid sitcom star at age 13. Todd Bridges and Dana Plato also became teen magazine fixtures and talk show regulars. The chemistry between the three young leads and Conrad Bain, who played their father Philip Drummond, was the glue that kept audiences watching. Bain, fresh off the sitcom, Maude brought warmth and gravitas to balance the mischief of his two adopted sons and Kimberly's charm. Supporting characters also contributed to the show's appeal. Charlotte Rae, as housekeeper Edna Garrett, became so beloved that she spun off into her own series, The Facts of Life. NBC smartly used crossovers to extend the brand's lifespan, and with each season, Diff'rent Strokes became further embedded in American pop culture. The writing team was equally adaptable. At first, Dana Plato's appearances were limited in Season 1 because producers weren't sure if Kimberly would be a permanent character. But positive viewer feedback made it impossible to cut her. The trio of Arnold, Willis, Kimberly became a symbol of a new kind of TV family that broke away from the monochrome molds of the 70s. Even the choice of title has its own behind-the-scenes trivia. The phrase "different strokes for different folks" was already popular, but few know that boxing legend Muhammad Ali used it in a 1966 interview. When Ali guest starred on the show in 1979, it created a full-circle moment for the show's name. From a production standpoint, NBC understood they had not just a sitcom, but a tool to connect with a broad, diverse audience. In the early 80s, as the series hit peak ratings and moved into daily syndication, Tandem Productions and Gary Coleman's representatives pushed for a salary increase. The dispute escalated to lawsuits with fears that millions could be lost if Gary walked away. But after negotiations, Season 4 began with a new pay deal, cementing Gary's status as NBC's ace in the hole. Under the stage lights, everything seemed perfect. Gary Coleman delivered a punchline. Todd Bridges rolled his eyes, Dana Plato laughed, and Conrad Bain smiled warmly, and the audience on the other side of the screen erupted in joy. But when the cameras stopped rolling and the canned laughter faded away, the people who had brought Diff'rent Strokes to life stepped back into a completely different world. A world without scripts, without a director calling cut, and with no guarantee that everything would end happily ever after. It was there that fame, money, and pressure tangled into a complicated maze, pulling each of them toward unexpected turns. And from this point on, the story took a different path, one where the TV family became nothing more than a memory, and real life began to reveal tragedies the audience could never have imagined. Gary Coleman, from NBC's Prince to a tragedy behind the spotlight. Gary Coleman was unlike any other child star in Hollywood. Born with a congenital kidney disease, he underwent a transplant at a young age, and years of treatment stunted his growth at 4'8", 1.42 m. Yet Gary possessed mischievous eyes, a natural comedic reflex, and an instinct for delivering lines that could make audiences burst out laughing. The role of Arnold Jackson on Diff'rent Strokes was virtually written for him, making him the centerpiece of the small screen from 1978 onward. At first, Gary earned $1.800 per episode, but within just 3 seasons, with his catchphrase, "What you talking about, Willis," becoming a cultural phenomenon, he negotiated a staggering $70,000 per episode, a record for a child star on NBC at the time. From a virtually unknown boy, Gary became a face printed on t-shirts, postcards, and memorabilia across America. Behind the spotlight, however, lurked a darker truth. Gary's parents and manager controlled all his earnings, promising to keep them in a trust until he came of age. When he finally checked, he discovered that most of the money was gone. Feeling betrayed, Gary sued his parents and manager, winning $1.3 million in damages, only a fraction of the missing fortune. When Diff'rent Strokes ended, Gary faced the curse of his career-defining role. He struggled to find new work because audiences could only see him as Arnold. He took odd jobs to make ends meet, even working as a security guard at a mall. It was there that an incident occurred. Gary hit a fan who asked for his autograph, landing his name back in the headlines, but this time for all the wrong reasons. His personal life was equally turbulent. In 2007, he married Shannon Price, but the couple divorced just a year later. Despite this, they continued living together on and off, marked by frequent arguments, altercations, and mutual accusations. In 1999, Gary declared bankruptcy, claiming over $72,000 in debt and no steady income. From $70,000 an episode, he had spiraled into debt, forced to appear on reality shows or take minor acting roles to survive. On May 26, 2010, Gary suffered a seizure at his Utah home, fell, and hit his head, causing an intracranial hemorrhage. Placed on life support, he died 2 days later at the age of 42. His death shocked the public, not only because he was gone too soon, but because of the tragic irony of his life, from NBC's beloved Prince, bringing laughter to millions, to a man struggling with debt, illness, and loneliness. Gary Coleman will forever live in viewers' memories as the witty Arnold, but his life story remains a stark warning about the price of fame and the fragility of Hollywood dreams. Dana Plato, from Golden Girl to a sudden, unstoppable fall. If Gary Coleman was the mischievous heart of Diff'rent Strokes, Dana Plato was its graceful, warm presence beside her 2 brothers on screen. Born in 1964, Dana entered show business at just 7 years old. She was not only a familiar face in over 100 television commercials, but also a promising figure skater. Before her teenage years, Dana was already accustomed to stage lights, performance pressure, and hours-long filming schedules. That early foundation helped her land the role of Kimberly Drummond, the kind, intelligent daughter of wealthy Philip Drummond, at just 13. In the early seasons, Kimberly didn't appear in every episode, but Dana quickly became an essential part of the Drummond family. Her radiant smile and natural charm made audiences believe in the image of a rich girl without arrogance, someone who could easily connect with her two adopted brothers, Arnold and Willis. Yet behind the camera, Dana's life was veering in a completely different direction. In 1984, at just 19 years old, Dana became pregnant with her first child with musician Lanny Lambert. For a young star who was the clean-cut symbol of a family sitcom, the news alarmed Diff'rent Strokes producers. They feared Kimberly's image would be compromised and ultimately removed Dana from the main cast. She only returned as a guest star for a few episodes in the final 2 seasons. Her rising career suddenly stalled, and from then on, Dana struggled to find her footing again. Her marriage to Lambert lasted 6 years before ending in divorce. During the separation, Dana lost custody of her son Tyler Lambert, due to issues surrounding her lifestyle and finances. She gradually sank into drug and alcohol abuse at first to cope with stress, then as a destructive habit that eroded both her health and career. With no major roles, Dana took small acting jobs to survive in Hollywood, but the Golden Girl shine had long faded. By the 1990s, her life had spiraled into chaos. In February 1991, she walked into a Las Vegas video store carrying a pellet gun and demanded money. The police were called, and her arrest for armed robbery made headlines nationwide. Just a year later, Dana was arrested again, this time for forging a prescription to obtain painkillers. The smiling face of Kimberly was replaced in the press by mugshots of a worn, red-eyed woman in decline. Desperate for a career comeback, Dana reinvented herself with a more provocative image. She posed for Playboy and appeared in a few softcore adult films, hoping to regain attention and earn quick money. Instead of reviving her career, these choices solidified her public image as a fallen former star. On May 8, 1999, Dana was found dead in her motorhome in Moore, Oklahoma, from a drug overdose. The coroner ruled it a suicide. She was only 34. The news shocked fans and her former Diff'rent Strokes co-stars, especially since just 24 hours earlier she had appeared on a radio show speaking about her past and expressing a desire to start over. The tragedy didn't end there. In 2010, her son Tyler Lambert, then 25, also died by suicide just days before Mother's Day. His death felt like a fresh wound to those who still remembered Dana fondly. Dana Plato's story is a bittersweet reminder of how fragile fame can be. From a bright 7-year-old with limitless promise to a beloved family sitcom figure, she fell off the ladder of stardom after a single personal turning point. Losing her role, her marriage custody of her son, and control over her life, Dana spiraled into addiction scandals and despair. In the audience's memory, she will always be the blonde-haired girl with a gentle smile and warm eyes beside her 2 adopted brothers, an image so beautiful that it makes her ending all the more heartbreaking. Todd Bridges, Fighting the Darkness. If Gary Coleman brought laughter, and Dana Plato brought warmth to Diff'rent Strokes, Todd Bridges was the steady anchor on screen as Willis Jackson, the calm yet tough older brother to Arnold. But in real life, Todd's world was far from the stable image he portrayed, filled instead with shadows the audience never saw. Todd was no stranger to the spotlight. From an early age, he appeared in commercials and guest TV roles. But behind the scenes, his childhood carried deep wounds. In his memoir, Killing Willis, Todd revealed he had been sexually abused by his publicist, someone his family trusted. That trauma became a silent knot in his life, fueling a self-destructive path later on. When Diff'rent Strokes ended, Todd was in his early 20s, a fragile stage when many child actors struggle to redefine their careers. Without the stability of his role as Willis, he slipped into the world of crack cocaine and methamphetamine. Drugs for Todd were both a way to escape painful memories and a trap that worsened everything. In the late 80s and early 90s, Todd's name was in the headlines constantly, but not for acting. He was arrested multiple times for reckless driving, making threats, drug possession, illegal firearms, and even ramming his car. The most serious was in 1989 when he was accused of shooting a drug dealer 8 times. He stood trial for attempted murder and later for assault with a firearm in a second case. Both times, Todd was acquitted thanks largely to the defense of attorney Johnny Cochran, who would later gain fame representing O.J. Simpson. But even beating the charges didn't free him from his addiction. In December 1992, when police stopped him on his way to buy drugs, Todd seriously considered ending his life. The judge in the case himself, a former addict, gave Todd a rare chance, 90 days in jail, as a way to cut him off from his old environment and begin the path to recovery. Todd took that chance. From then on, he committed himself to sobriety, cut ties with toxic influences, and joined support programs. 3 decades later, Todd Bridges has remained clean, living proof that even from the deepest darkness, there is a way back. Today, Todd is the last surviving original cast member of Diff'rent Strokes. He appears on talk shows, game shows, and occasionally guest stars on TV, but his most important role is sharing his story as a cautionary tale. From a beloved child actor through addiction, violence, near-death experiences, and high-profile trials, Todd Bridges chose to stand back up and has maintained sobriety for 30 years. For Todd, survival wasn't luck, it was the result of determination. As he once said, "I went to hell and came back. If I can do it, anyone can." And perhaps that's what makes Todd Bridges' story stand out. Not a perfectly happy ending, but proof that light can still be found at the end of the darkest road. The real relationships among the cast. Though each would eventually go their own way and carry stories marked by turmoil in the early days, the Diff'rent Strokes cast truly felt like a second family. Gary Coleman, Todd Bridges, and Dana Plato quickly bonded over youth, long hours on set, behind-the-scenes jokes, and moments of helping each other through the pressures of fame. Conrad Bain, as father figure Philip Drummond, was regarded as both a mentor and a steady emotional anchor. On set, everything seemed perfect. They laughed, chatted, and radiated the warmth audiences felt through the screen. But by season 3, that closeness began to crack. Gary's parents, who also managed his contracts and finances, became increasingly controlling over his schedule, insisting he be kept separate from his co-stars. They hired a private bodyguard and limited his interaction with the rest of the cast. The once friendly atmosphere was slowly replaced by distance. Todd Bridges recalled that from that point on, Gary started behaving differently, sometimes with a hint of superiority, no longer joking around like before. Dana sensed it too, but it was Todd who had been closest to Gary on screen who felt the loss of that friendship most. Tensions reached a peak during one taping. According to Todd, Gary repeatedly snapped at him to be quiet. Todd replied that he wouldn't let anyone speak to him that way. Words escalated into action. Gary slapped Todd, and Todd slapped him back before walking away to prevent a full-blown fight. Afterward, they remained professional in front of the cameras, but off-set they didn't speak for years. Still, not all behind-the-scenes memories were bitter. One lighthearted story was how Todd Bridges introduced Janet Jackson to the role of Charlene Dupre Willis's girlfriend on the show. His real reason, simple and a bit funny: Todd thought Janet was cute and wanted more chances to talk to her. At the time, Janet was filming Good Times in the same studio, and Todd's suggestion led to a charming on-screen pairing that fans still remember fondly. More broadly, the cast's relationships were shaped heavily by the production team and the way young talent was managed in that era. The pressure to maintain a marketable image, strict control over publicity, and interference from family and managers often created tension. Commercial decisions, from contracts and pay to character development, didn't just shape careers. They influenced emotions, trust, and how the actors saw one another. In the end, even after years of distance and unresolved issues, some bonds were mended. Todd and Gary reconciled before Gary's death, and Dana is remembered warmly despite her tragic path. Beneath the conflicts and differences, the connection they once shared remained an emotional legacy of Diff'rent Strokes that time couldn't erase. The fall of the show and the Diff'rent Strokes curse. Every peak has its drop, and for Diff'rent Strokes the decline became evident by season 6. Ratings steadily fell, partly because audiences had grown accustomed to its familiar formula, and partly because television tastes were shifting in the mid-1980s. In an attempt to revive interest, the producers introduced 2 new characters: Maggie McKinney, played by Dixie Carter, an aerobics instructor who becomes Mr. Drummond's new wife, and her mischievous red-haired son, Sam Danny Cooksey. The idea was to bring fresh energy and explore blended family storylines that were in vogue at the time. But the reception wasn't what the network had hoped. While Maggie and Sam were likable, they couldn't replace the audience's bond with the core trio of Arnold, Willis, and Kimberly. In the fall of 1985, NBC decided to cancel the show after 7 successful seasons, ending its golden era. However, ABC quickly stepped in, hoping to rekindle what magic was left. That September, Diff'rent Strokes returned on ABC with notable changes. Dixie Carter didn't reprise her role, and Maggie was recast with Marianne Mobley. Even so, the shakeup failed to draw viewers. After just one shortened season of 19 episodes instead of the planned 22, ABC officially pulled the plug in March 1986. The show's end was not just the conclusion of a hit sitcom, it was a jolt to the cast, many of whom had spent their childhood or early adulthood tied to it. Without the familiar stage lights, they had to face a harsher reality. The iconic roles that had once been their pride now became a shadow they couldn't escape. Gary Coleman struggled to find acting work, Dana Plato lost her foothold in the industry, and Todd Bridges spiraled into drugs and legal troubles. Even supporting actors had difficulty landing major projects as audiences continued to see them only through the lens of the old sitcom. This string of tragedies fueled the tabloid phrase the Diff'rent Strokes curse. The press painted a grim picture child stars who rose to fame too quickly, only to fall into addiction bankruptcy scandal, and in some cases die young. Gary died at 42 from complications after a head injury. Dana died by suicide at 34, and her son also died by suicide 11 years later. Todd became the sole surviving main cast member, carrying a past filled with scars. Of course, this so-called curse wasn't some dark magic. It was the product of a recurring pattern in the American entertainment industry, children thrust into adult-level responsibilities earning millions without proper financial safeguards, lacking money management skills, and receiving almost no psychological support when the spotlight faded. The rapid early fame brought crushing pressure, and when the lights went out, that emptiness was easily filled with self-destructive choices. Diff'rent Strokes ended quietly compared to its early roar of success, but its behind-the-scenes story has echoed for decades. Not only because of the laughter it left in viewers' memories, but because it stands as a cautionary tale about the cost of early stardom and the lack of preparation for life after fame. For those who once loved the show, the curse is more than a tabloid label. It's a genuine sadness at seeing the most familiar faces on screen endure the greatest losses off it. Secrets and fun facts. Viewers never knew. Even after more than 4 decades, Diff'rent Strokes still has behind-the-scenes stories that would surprise even its most loyal fans. One of the most famous involves the legendary line, "What you talking about, Willis?" a phrase forever tied to Gary Coleman and American pop culture. In the original script, it was simply written as, "What are you talking about, Willis?" But with his natural comedic instincts, Gary shortened it, added a suspicious tone, and delivered it with a teasing bite that made audiences burst into laughter. The improv was so successful that writers began intentionally adding it into more episodes, turning it into Arnold Jackson's catchphrase and a personal trademark for Gary. Another fun fact lies in the show's very name. The phrase "different strokes for different folks" had been common in American slang since the 1960s, but few know that boxing legend Muhammad Ali used it during a 1966 interview. When producers chose the title Diff'rent Strokes, no one expected Ali to appear on the show, but in 1979 he did, playing himself, completing a perfect full-circle moment for the title's origin. Gary Coleman's salary journey also reflects just how powerful the show's pull was. Starting at $1.800 per episode in Season 1, he quickly became NBC's ace card. After 3 seasons of soaring ratings and public adoration, Gary's representatives demanded $70,000 per episode. The negotiations grew so tense that the dispute nearly caused Gary to leave the show, with NBC and production company Tandem Productions filing lawsuits against each other. In the end, a new deal kept Gary on board and secured his place as NBC's highest-paid sitcom star at the time. Few people know that Dana Plato, who played Kimberly Drummond, almost didn't make it past the early episodes. In Season 1, her character was often explained away as being away at school, partly because producers hadn't decided whether to keep Kimberly in the main cast. They worried that audiences wouldn't connect with a female lead when the central story focused on 2 adopted brothers. But the overwhelmingly positive viewer response changed their minds, and Kimberly became a key part of the Drummond family, staying until Dana was written out after becoming pregnant at 19. Beyond the laughs, Diff'rent Strokes became known for its very special episodes that tackled sensitive social issues. One of the most shocking was The Bicycle Man, a 2-part story about a pedophile luring Arnold and his friend Dudley. The role was played by Gordon Jump, a bold casting choice, since he was beloved for his gentle persona on WKRP in Cincinnati. For a family sitcom of that era to address such a topic so directly was almost unheard of, and the episode was later used as an educational tool for parents and schools to discuss the dangers of child abuse. Behind the scenes, producing these very special episodes required a delicate balance between script performance and message delivery. Young actors had to be emotionally protected during filming while still giving authentic performances. Gary Coleman once shared that filming such episodes made him more aware of real-world issues, even if at that age he couldn't fully grasp the seriousness. These little-known stories show that Diff'rent Strokes was far more than just lighthearted entertainment. It was a blend of sharp actor improvisation production decisions that shaped character destinies and courageous choices to address sensitive topics on national television. Together, they helped make the show a part of American TV history, a place where laughter and life lessons coexisted, leaving a lasting mark on fans for generations. Looking back more than 4 decades later, Diff'rent Strokes was not just a hit sitcom of the late 70s and early 80s, it was also a textbook example of both the light and dark sides of early fame. Gary Coleman, Dana Plato, and Todd Bridges were once faces beloved by millions of American households, but the speed and intensity of their rise to fame brought with it enormous pressures that no teenager is ever truly prepared to handle. The so-called curse often mentioned in the press was in reality the result of a harsh truth when the stage lights go out. The emptiness left behind can swallow anyone who lacks the psychological foundation and life skills to stand firm. If you've ever laughed at one of Diff'rent Strokes' iconic lines, or gone silent after learning the real-life stories behind the screen, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next video.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.